Okay, Yuval, how are you?
This meeting is recorded. Hey, thank you very much, Neil, for having me. I'm
Yes,
great. How are
yes.
you?
We are
Cool.
very excited to have you. A lot of people are looking forward for this talk. And before we talk about Team8 FinTech, which is the topic of the call, I want them to understand about you. What did you do before? Who are you? So the people who don't know you here will get to know you.
So I have a very classic story of, I guess, entrepreneurship. And I think it's important that from people that are looking at entrepreneurship in general, then I think that the story makes sense. So like anyone in Israel, I was in the army and I was in the elite in it. And then I went and studied engineering, bachelor's and master's degree. While I was studying, I started to work in startups. So I was QA and later joined R&D in a high-tech company. And then I did most of the position that I later managed. So I started with QA, then R&D, then product, then the marketing, sales, business development, and then I was a hired CEO, in one of the first internet startups. And only then I started the first company that I ran, a company called Border Free. I started many years ago, and it took quite a while for this to mature. It was almost the case of the internet, and we took it public eventually in Nasdaq. I was already out of this company. I replaced myself with head of sales, so a guy named Mike DeSimone led the company by the time of the IPO. But it was very, very emotional and powerful moment to take it public. Later, it was sold to Whitney Bose, and it's still operational many years after. So, and then once I was um, out of Order Free, I started Pioneer. It's a company that I still involved in, and Pioneer I ran it for the first 6 years. Um, and Pioneer, and maybe I'll start into fintech. And Pioneer, what we do is we part of the e-commerce economy. We do the payout for those companies. So when there are merchants at Amazon and those merchants needs to get paid by Amazon, then it creates a whole series of complexity, and we outsource it. We do it for those merchants, whether it's Airbnb, Amazon, Facebook, Google, I mean, you name it. And it's a problem and a solution that was created and evolved as part of the e-commerce. That's who I am. Um,
I just want to say, Pioneer. I mean, everybody who's watching us, of course, know it's a huge player. I mean, you're just saying you're saying it like this, but everybody here on FinTech knows the company, knows the markets. I mean, it's huge, right?
I would focus on the quality and also, so yeah, I think it's many of the thing we're proud of, and in many ways we carved the way for many companies that later followed. So we created some kind of industry. But for the most part, if you like, what we thought at earlier is we become a layer of part of the e-commerce, which we thought we were going to do from the get-go. So if you look at fintech service e-commerce, Pioneer and company like it are one of the layers over there. Yeah, Pioneer, we employ about 1,500 people globally. It's a genuine, true global company in the sense that we actually have physical location in many, many countries. And those people in those locations makes a huge difference to understand the markets, the culture, the nuance, the compliance, regulatory compliance, and so many more that only local culture can predict.
Amazing. So now diving into the new Team8 FinTech, of course, I'm curious. A lot of people are tuning in right now and they want to know what is it all about? Who is involved? How are you serving these FinTechs?
So I think the reason I joined Team8 and I genuinely believe in it, whether it's going to be with Team8 be successful or someone else, but I really think that there is a gap in the market, huge gap. So once there's a company with a valid idea and a semi-customer that somehow pays something for the service, from that point on, you have a whole industry that will take this company and push it forward. Um, so you would have, I mean, VCs, early stage VCs, later stage VCs, mezzanine VCs, that. But the beginning is still, even though there's so much money involved, is confused, chaotic, unstructured, and without any guidance. So everybody's waiting for those three engineers to come up with a brilliant idea from the garage, but nobody tell them what ideas are relevant. And I think if you like, many of the people who would watch this video, who are watching it now, I guess, they have ideas and think in their companies that they know if there was some hungry startup that would actually solve this problem for me, I can actually get much more out of my company as it is now. IT, R&D is so overwhelmed that I need to make priority, and there's so many things that didn't get in. But many of those things that didn't get in can feed many, many families. So there's almost like a gap. There is a lot of needs and a lot of talent and a lot of drive, but there's some of they don't need. So I would say the following, and that what Team8 I think believe will do, is to identify those ideas, identify the founders, identify companies who would say, if you give me this, I want it, I will use it. Go ahead and build it for me. And then if you combine this, then you can theoretically have much better predictability of success for early stage companies, right? So if you think as an entrepreneur now, when you're sitting in your living room and say, I want to be an entrepreneur, I want to be able to see this company go public, I want to make a difference, I want to be really relevant, I want to work with people I appreciate. What's next? What do they do? And they struggle in the kitchen and they can't connect the dots and figure out how to take a risk. And I think there's a lot to be done to reduce that risk and increase the probability of a company to be successful from the get-go.
Who is behind Team8 Fintech? Because we know Team8 is a strong group, and now there's something new. So who is leading this?
So it's four of us who are basically the 14, whatever. And it's Al-Kefet is the energy driver. And she came from running Bank Leumi, which is the largest bank in Israel. So she'd been there from the banking hat, and she has made thousands of decisions from a bank perspective. And she'd been in the bank for many years, so she climbed the ladder to become CEO from the ground up. So it's not like she was parachuted. And then we have Ronen Asya, who was co-founder of eToro, and he built a fintech company also from the ground up. He was employee number one. So, and that's a B2C, that's like the consumer, the largest global trading platform. So we have a lot of between, and then there's Galia, who came from PayPal, and she was in charge of the Middle East or Africa, sorry. And between the four of us, you have accumulated knowledge of many years of trial and error. So if you look at an idea in our space, then even if we don't have a good intuition right away, we know how to pick the phone and get not only intuition but also get into a potential design partner very quickly, and it's unfair advantage. So what you need at this point is you want to have right, competent, driven, smart entrepreneur who want to say at this point, okay, I want to build my company, I want to increase the chance of success. Here's a team that I can assume will avoid a lot of mistakes that I don't even know that exist. And that's kind of the combination.
So this is Team8 Fintech, because I'm familiar with Team8 in the cyber. For people who don't know, maybe you can give a little bit of a view about Team8 and how big, how influential it is.
So Team8 initially started from, so you have in Israel, you have the hierarchy of the brain, and I think the number one in this pyramid is unit 80 to 100. That's where they take all the kids and screen them by IQ and push them to the army. It's not very to go to the army so they get the privilege of picking all the smart ones. Then over there, they train them mostly on cyber and data and the latest and greatest technologies. So it's a hub for a lot of wisdom and smart, and they have a government budget to run research. So it's a very powerful group, and the CTO of this group and the head of this group are they are the ones who started Team8. So now you have people who have experience from very high budget project. I mean, many. This is like a huge group, and with phenomenal budget. So you have people who run many projects with a lot of complexity. Plus, you have access to the talent, which is a big issue. So it's like, how do you get the top-notch technologists right out of the army? And so over there, it's kind of I guess, circles of people who know people. So that combination allowed the Team8 to build, I don't know, a bunch of companies by now. I think like 12. I think by now it's only 6 year project, but by now almost all of those companies have already exceeded around A or B, meaning that way beyond the concept, way beyond the proof of concept or design partnership, already in commercial revenue. And the round A are from it's kind of a validation from a later stage VC. It's around A and B.
Yeah.
So far, it looks very good.
Yeah, a lot of people are watching us. We are the Fintech Nation Summit. So we have nations here. We have Singapore, and we have Hong Kong, and we have the UK, and we have even the Emirates. What can you say a little bit about? We just saw the news that a lot of Israeli fintech delegations flew from Israel, of course, to to Dubai, and from Dubai, delegations are starting to come here. What is the fintech angle here?
So yet to be seen, right? It's yet to be seen. What we saw, at least not only Dubai, what we saw, and I think we saw it in Egypt. This is, if you look at Pioneer angle, so Pioneer is a US company, therefore it's operational in many of those countries already. And we saw in many of the crises, for example, in Egypt, when everything was really bad, you saw more and more freelancers starting to work from Egypt and doing projects, and sometimes for Israeli companies. So sometimes you have Egyptian people doing projects for Fiverr, which is Israeli based, and then they get paid into Egypt through Pioneer. So we saw a huge spike. I think that you have to be seen how it's going to work out, but those are really clever, financially wise, clever, rich, competent countries, and I mean we'll see how it's going to play out. Actually, it's a good question. I'm curious, and maybe I think about it a little bit. Maybe I'll bring it up later in the discussion today.
Yeah. I know that your company is doing great, and of course the fintech space is so hot right now. I mean, we see these banks, neobanks, fintech, financial services from even from all kinds of spectrum, from freelancers, like a niche bank for the freelancers, a niche bank for the SMEs. There's so much opportunity around the world, and you started this fintech arm right now during COVID. How was it to form this group together during COVID?
So I think you said two things. So I'll break it down. There's a lot of hype on fintech, and I think it brings good and bad. The good thing is that there's some kind of a collegial relationship between the different groups, right? So if when we got Amazon as a customer, if you would go to Amazon 2 years before that, and there was not enough fintech, they wouldn't use a fintech company. They would prefer to work with a bank. So there's almost like the more fintech exists, the more it's legitimate for companies to use fintech companies and not banks. It's kind of a more collegial than competition. That's first thing. Second, when there's a lot of hype, a lot of companies, I'm worried about that many of those companies don't have a right justification to exist, right? So if you look at those companies, many of them will clearly die. And can you avoid the one that people are going to waste their time? Can you avoid the financing that will be lost? And I think this is the challenge. I think this is what Team8 comes to play. Is basically, okay, let's do more validation with more professionals before we just give few energetic young kids the green light and the money, because they're going to spend 2 years. Um, the risk is very high. Yeah?
And for the second question that I asked, how was it to form this group together during COVID?
Well, on the good side, it saved us a lot of flights. Many of the meetings and discussions happened on Zoom, so that's saved a lot of fuel and sleeping on the chair. But it's fine. I think there's something about the world continue to go on, and it's beautiful to see how, business continues, and for the most part, it's the same intensity. Less office time, but same intensity, same. I think fintech in general, I agree with the merits. There's no, ideological agenda in fintech. This is, a financial service.
Yeah.
And you can provide a better financial service. There's nothing, you don't cure cancer. You provide better payment services. So it's going kind of I guess in the COVID, it's just the same to the marriage.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so we are reaching to the end, and I understand that that you guys are open. You are open for you just launched, right? Basically.
We launched. I think what we can use in this forum, right? So I would say, obviously entrepreneurs, it's fine, but if people that large companies are watching this and they have, things that they wish they could do, but they just not getting there because of the priority and the pipeline and all this stuff. I really want them to reach out to us, right? So we're looking for ideas that actually have the customer, not to change the future based on what we think is going to be the future, but what actually is needed in the market. And I'm curious. I'm very curious, whether things that those companies need can be broken down to become a company that provide those services for them and give it a kick start.
Great. So all of you guys or fintechs who are watching, feel free to reach, of course, on the site, on LinkedIn, on all the channels, right?
There was a question, you asked me a question about, the opportunity with this new piece with the Emirates.
Yeah.
And I think that one of the things that Israel excelled, right? So in Israel, you have years of startup nation stuff. So you've accumulated knowledge, in different types of skills that can help build stuff. So the skill set of the people in Israel can potentially be very, very instrumental in doing something together with the Gulf. And if anything in fintech that they're open to, then potentially Israel can develop it with kind of how the product and the data and the machine learning and everything that is related to the new fintech. So I would say this combination with their banking system and access to so many communities that we never had access to is probably the benefit, right? So you can service all of the Muslim world through those Gulf countries, and that's huge. This is like it was out of reach for Israeli companies for 60 years.
Yes, and by the way, just so you know, the idea for the summit actually came. The Ministry of Finance in the Netherlands, he wrote in a manifesto, in a memo, that they want the Netherlands to refocus on fintech, and they want the Netherlands to create these fintech bridges. And they only mentioned two countries. They mentioned Israel, and they mentioned Singapore. So these are the markets that how they look at us.
Yeah, I think also we need a very brave central bank and regulatory environment to allow fintech to take risks. So many countries fail because you need real risk as a regulator to allow this sandbox to operate and yeah, try things that never been tried before.
Yes. Thank you very much, Yuval, and we'll catch up soon. Right?
Thank you very much, Neil.
Bye. Take care.